Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Totally Indian Football Show. I'm your host Siju, and today we have special two guests on the show, and they both are very well known among the Indian football circuit. Their voices are also well known apart from their faces. But so let's hear some more from them. Let me introduce Pulasta, who dons many hats. He's a journalist, broadcaster, commentator. I don't know what else. We will probably get to know about that as well on the show. We also have Darren Caldeira, a former international player who's currently turned into a football pundit, and we also saw him don the commentator's hat. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you, Siju, for having us. And such a nice introduction. Sorry to butt in. You could have added time waster. That's what I do most of the day.
No worries, no worries. I mean, I think we are all used to that. So, talking is a business where you need some time as well to waste. Okay, so let's get into it. Today, we are probably going to have a very free flow chat just to get to know. Well, you two are now the new voices for us Indian football fans to hear us, give us all the commentary lines and everything else, memorable lines, I would say. So let's get started with Pulasta. Pulasta, how do you don so many roles? I mean, you are a journalist, you're also a broadcaster, and then a commentator. How do you juggle between these things?
I think the journalism bit was. I thought I had to kind of do it for the first few years to get a hold of, the sport in India, how it works, cover it properly. I knew that, while I always wanted to do commentary, there was no way that immediately after my master's, somebody would give me that job. So I was kind of ready to do journalism in a bit to eventually become a broadcast journalist and so on and so forth. So that happened. So when I quit my job, I knew that I will have to do a lot of things. I quit quite early in my career at just 28, I think. So I knew I had to do a lot of things because it's not easy as a freelancer. And I think all of it goes hand in hand. So journalism has obviously kind of taken a hit over the last couple of years with commentary taking the front seat. But I'm just kind of lucky, right place, right time, right sport, I would say, to be able to do so many things.
Yeah, and Darren, coming to you, well, we know the introduction to you for you into the commentary field, but and I think you've already told me don't ask me these common questions that I've already answered too many times. But just for our listeners of this show, if you can tell us how did the whole transition happen, because it wasn't an easy decision. It's never an easy decision for a player to hang his boots, right? And then right on immediately you were part of the ISL football punditry team. So if you can tell us how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very difficult decision, to be honest. I felt like I wanted to play a couple of more years. Physically, also, I felt fine, but then I still had this, I always thought about what I would do post football, and I had a few opportunities to do this, get into punditry or something like that. It always clashed with something or the other initially. And and then finally it came at a time where I was actually considering maybe, hanging up my boots, and this came at the right time. So I think the transition has been smooth because, and it also helps when you're connected with the sport. So I feel like, a lot of times, okay, I'm not maybe there on the pitch, but at least I'm surrounded with people constantly speaking about football, and if you're commentating, you're watching the game, and then again, talking about football. So that helps. But yeah, I would say I'm quite fortunate that way. It's been a good transition, and I'm really enjoying it, to be honest.
Great. And I mean, so are we. I must say the fans are also enjoying hearing you on the show, hearing you on the mic, I must say. Pulasta, if you can tell us, unlike Darren, you were intended, you wanted to become a commentator. So if you can, there's a lot of preparation that goes. It's not very easy to go into the flow and get those lines, because it's live commentary. And we've also seen, we look up to the guys like Peter Dury, and many among them. So we've also seen a behind the scene where their preparation and the papers are colorful, too many lines, too many texts, and too many things on the paper. So is it something similar for you as well?
Not at all. I think there's two pieces of paper on my table. I love the way, but all the others. I mean, I've seen Andy kind of work very hard on his notes. I've seen every other commentator work really hard on their notes. I think it's something I still have to pick up in terms of the detail. I think I like to be very decluttered in my head before a game. I just have like a few points which are essential. So I don't do that kind of research. And I think it's something that also has to do with the fact that the newer commentators, and I would consider myself new, we had the option of having the internet and the full power of the mobile phone all the time in terms of information and all that. But this real preparation of these notes, the colorful notes and the facts. Yes, I've tried to use highlighters at times. I did use them last season for the first time. It was a big high for me in terms of going and buying a highlighter and using it. So I am trying to slowly kind of make my notes more detailed, but I don't have those many papers, to be honest, and I feel underprepared sometimes. I'm like, wow, so much preparation, and will I fall short? It's always there in the back of your head, but thankfully there are people in your ears who keep reminding you of the right things, and they make my job so much easier. They're the unsung heroes of good broadcast.
Right. Now, for example, if you can give us a little more detail in terms of how do you prepare for a game. Now, for example, the first ISL match to be held is ATKMB versus Kerala Blasters. And if you had to commentate on that, if you can take us through what happens behind the scenes, especially with you doing the comms for that.
Obviously, there's a detailed report that we get in terms of the stats and the trends and all of that. And that kind of makes things very easy. But how I would prepare, like if I would give you a step by step, is first I would read that report. I would then mark out the points that stand out for me and which I believe might happen in the game. The probability factor will be higher. For example, I will highlight maybe all the Roy Krishna stats in terms of number of goals and, last season, what he did. So I would pick out a bunch of players in terms of having the most important numbers. I would pick out a few trends from the team's perspective as well. How many openers have ATK Mohun Bagan won? How many have Kerala Blasters won, for example? And I will keep these notes with me while I'm on air. As for the opener and a few phrases, I have a Word document and sticky notes, virtual sticky notes on my desktop, where I have mentioned what I'm going to say in the opener. I have mentioned, if it's a big game, of course, I always prepare my opener. I prepare what I have to say when the supers are showing, when all of that is happening. Even for the lineups, if it's a big game, sometimes if the number of changes are too many to remember, I will write that down. And then throughout the game, I will have these notes where if there is a certain type of goal or if there is a certain player who's going to score, then sometimes I keep a few things to say ready. And I think it's about getting the opportunity. Sometimes it's very frustrating because you think you have a decent goal shout and you have to hold it in the bank for like 2 or 3 years because you just don't get the right moment. So my preparation is more on that side. In terms, my game preparation is very immediate. I will forget what happened in 3 games ago. But what I've seen is most of the commentators have a massive memory. I think my preparation is very immediate, very to the point, very then at the moment, and a lot more in terms of putting out a decent show to make the game sound enjoyable.
Wow. Now, to all our listeners, you're listening to this episode just a week before ISL. So that was a good insight to how Pulasta is going to work behind the scenes. Thank you for that detailed explanation, Pulasta.
Yeah, thanks for the tips, Pulasta. I'm probably going to pick on a few of those.
Well, coming to you, Darren, I'm sure it's going to be a little different for you the way you prepare because one, the transition that happened very quick. You probably didn't have much time to prepare for yourself. Second, in terms of you're not in the lead. You're still taking the second fiddle, right? You're the guy who would probably throw some stats, something more technical about the game, some anecdotes and stuff like that. So how different is your preparation?
Yeah, so for me, I'm again, like Pulasta mentioned, even I feel like I know I'm very new to this, so I feel I require a lot more prep than probably the more experienced campaigners do. So I feel, I watch a couple of the games of the teams that are playing, the previous games that they've played leading up to the one that I'm doing. So I know exactly the kind of football that they're playing or, most of the players that are playing and the kind of players that they are. And yeah, the stats team as well, they help out with a lot of information there. But then yeah, there's a lot of information, so sometimes it's difficult to take everything on board, but you want to make sure you know the important points that are there. So that really helps. And then I feel I have a good equation with a lot of the players currently as well. So sometimes I feel like if I want just to figure out how the mood is in the camp or some things like that, and what's happening, or certain tidbits, like for example, it doesn't have to do anything, nothing to do with football. It just could be like certain players recently married, or he's had like just had a baby boy, something that you can mention, something different that you could mention in comms or maybe in the studio as well. So that also helps. And a few details here, like Pulasta mentioned, like your lineups and certain stats and things like that. And I've also been working on a few footballing terms and phrases that I should be, picking up every time I go live. So I think, you just want to add a little bit every time you go live. And the most important thing for me is having a good rapport with your co-commentator. I think that really helps. So I'm getting to know Pulasta now a lot more, and it's becoming easier every time we do a game. So yeah, I think there's a lot of prep that goes in. It's not just you go live and start speaking about the game, but yeah, these are a few of the things that I probably do before a game.
Do you probably practice something at home, like by yourself? Do you do something, some of the lines, how do you want to say it and stuff? Or do you run yourself, watch a game? Like I was told, I mean, I've also been told you should try it, commentary, and I've been told that, you watch a game, put it on mute, and you do the comms. Do you do something like that?
Yeah, I've done that. I don't know if Pulasta has done that, but I remember the first time I was going live, it was on such short notice when I was doing comms. So I was like, listen, I must try this. Yeah, like I just can't go live and then start speaking. So then I put on a game, couple of random matches, and I put it on mute, and I was just like, just blabbering going on. I don't even know how I sounded, but yeah, but I did a bit of that just to get the nerves out maybe.
I didn't know you did that, Darren.
I did do it. I did do it the first time. Yeah.
So I've done it like subconsciously when I've been watching any kind of football, in my head, always kind of doing it. But that's mostly because I probably had it in the back of my head that I might actually get to do a game someday. So yeah, but I think your question makes sense, because sometimes if I'm writing, I don't know, a prospective goal shout, I will in my head say it once in terms of whether it's easy to say on air. You don't want to you don't want to jumble your words after a great goal. So I used to overdo it earlier, and when I go back and listen to my older I-League games, I'm like, what was I thinking? I would use something flowery for just a normal pass, and I was like, I'm overdoing it. So I've started using slightly heavier language only for moments that deserve it. It's very difficult to get that kind of control, even with the stats. When I did my first ISL game, and I was like, wow, so many statistics, I would overdo the stats. I would have a stat every 10 minutes, and I was like, it's not just about the numbers. I was overdoing the stats bit. So which is why sometimes with Darren also, I believe that just the right amount of unpreparedness is sometimes good.
Right, absolutely. And I think, I mean, Darren mentioned about the rapport having with the co-commentator, and the reason why I've got the two of you is that we've now have two voices in you, which both of you guys have been leading the commentary bit, and it's been a refreshing two voices right on the show. We are not an expert here saying that whether it's good or bad, but just new, and it's just refreshing to hear that. So Darren, you mentioned about the rapport bit, but how do you guys prepare together if you're doing a match, a game together, that is? And is there something that you go back and forth over calls, over messages? Do you guys practice, or is there what goes behind preparing together?
There's no real preparation together, to be honest. I mean, in Pulasta, I'll tell you, it's just a lot of work that we both do individually, and then it's when we'll just have a tech check is when we both come on a call together, and then we may just discuss a couple of things here and there. But yeah, I think now I've realized how Pulasta works, and it's just about, like I said, that rapport. So now we kind of figure out how to go about it. So there's not too much of preparation together, and we just kind of we kind of hit it off and we go, go live. I don't think there's nothing really that we do together now.
Yeah, so I think it's unfortunate because it would be very different. I think Darren's opinion right now would be on a completely different level at this point if we ever did games together. But here's the thing, me and Darren have never done a game together physically as yet, standing next to each other. So when you're doing the ISL, and I noticed this last season, and I met Darren there for the first time last season when I did a few games at the Tilak Maidan. And that's the first time we met and you talk and all of that. There is automatically a kind of rapport that it's a very friendly atmosphere, to be very honest. But if this was in the bubble and me and him would be going on air, I think we'd know, right? We'd know a week ago what our games were.
Definitely. Yeah.
And we'd talk at breakfast about it. That's what I would do with, let's say, Pradyum Reddy, with whom I would always be on air for most of the time. That's what I would do with probably a Mace. So we would sit and we would spend time together. You're in the hotel, you're in the bubble, you go to the game 3 or 4 hours before kickoff. So you're talking in the car about that, and suddenly Darren will probably say something on the lines of, oh, by the way, this striker has 19 goals in the last 10 games. And I'm like, oh, I totally missed out on that. So it's a give and take. And I think the exposure to these people for me is vital in terms of understanding a game. Like Darren would watch games and analyze them. I would not always do that. I'd just probably go and watch the highlights to know how the first goal went in. So the approach is very different for him as an expert who has to give analysis and opinion compared to, I can get away with being absolutely neutral. I don't need to have an opinion.
Now, Pulasta, the question is to you. When you do games for the national team, right, how do you kind of then try to be neutral? Or is it okay for you to have that bias towards the national team?
It is slightly okay, is how I see it. But that also means, I have to be fair to the other side. It's a tight rope to walk on. But at the same time, and I've had conversations with people who are doing the commentary with me. I've had conversations with senior producers as to how should we approach this. And obviously there is a slight freedom to be more creative when it comes to your team doing well in that game. Even though if the mandate was be entirely neutral, it would be difficult to do that, but I would still do it. It's very easy for me to be neutral in club football because I don't have a team to support. So it's very easy for me to be excited about every goal in every team. But when it's an India game, obviously the fan inside me is always excited. And I think the examples, even in Argentina, South America, we know about goals where commentators have broken down in tears during big games when they're doing commentary, which is mostly consumed in their country. So I think that bit of leeway, unwritten creative rule, is there as long as you don't abuse it and sound entirely one-sided.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Pulasta there. I mean, it makes absolute sense. Because obviously you're not going to be biased, but at the same time, you need to call a spade sometimes. So you can't always look for tomorrow there's a scoreline, for example, if India is losing final. I hope that never happens. But if that is ever happening, you still can't go about saying, looking for positives constantly and, try to still make, the country look really well. But then like you mentioned, you need to find that balance. And I think that way, Pulasta, you do it absolutely well. Yeah, bang on. So good on you.
I think one of the examples, Siju, it's very interesting you asked this question, was when me and Darren were doing the AFC Cup Interzone semi-final, ATK Mohun Bagan and Nasaf. And obviously when it's a continental competition, you want clubs from your country to do well. It is just a general nature. You want them to do well. But at the same time, I think me and Darren, while we could look at each other on camera and the body language was, oh, okay, it's a difficult game, right? But at the same time, we had to be fair to Nasaf and how good they were. While at the same time kind of still letting each other know that, okay, it's not a result that you want to see. But that kind of, you just have to walk that, you have to be fair to the opposition at times, and Nasaf were incredible that day. And I think we did get excited with some of their attacking play, fairly so.
Right. Now, Darren, if I had to ask you, if you can tell us how were the emotions behind, when you got to know that you're doing your first game as a commentator, what went through your mind and how, and do you remember exactly which game was it? I'm sure you do, but if you can tell us the emotions that went behind it.
He was a bundle of nerves.
Yeah, I was super nervous. I remember that because I got to know. I think was it a day before Pulasta? I think it was a day or
Yeah,
two
a couple
before,
of
if I'm
days.
not
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
Yeah, so I got to know a couple of days before, but in my head I thought I was doing the punditry bit. I didn't know I was doing commentary because I was told, "Are you free for this game?" So in my head I was like, "Okay, I'll probably be going to the studio here, and it'll be punditry for the game." And I was like, "Okay, cool, great." And then a day before or something, no, 2 days before, I was told there's a tech check or whatever, something like that. And I'm like, "Wait, why is there a tech check? Like, what is happening here?" And that's when I asked, and I got to know, okay, I'm doing commentary for the game. And that's when I was like, okay, now I need to figure out how this works. I need to
Yeah.
get to know the players, the opposition a little more, and find out. Obviously, got on a call with Purasta. I was like, listen, dude, you gotta help me out here.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It
how
was
does
like,
this work?
you say everything, okay? You say everything. I don't know. I don't know. And I was
Yeah,
like,
I
yeah,
was just
yeah.
like, how do I do this? Like, things like that. I remember getting on a call with Anand. They got on a call with Mace as well, all three, to get like all sorts of information and how this works and things like that. And I was like, okay. I mean, I thought it went all right. In my head, I thought it was very, very average, actually, not even all right. But then I was just like, okay, the first one's done. Because the first few are always the difficult ones, I think. And then, yeah, and Pulasta obviously helps, man. I mean, you have someone who just can say the right things at the right time. So then, yeah, it really helps with you just butting in every now and then with a little bit of information here. But yeah, it was nerve wracking, if I have to say the least.
It's the same case with most players, Darren, if that makes you feel better. So even with Rennery Singh in the I League, with Denzel Franco, I mean, anybody, any of when you're playing and then suddenly thrust on air and you're given a mic and you're supposed to think on your feet. Even with the show, I think there's a certain preparedness. The presenter can kind of save you. Stuff like that happens. But when you're on air and you have to do the replays, it's incredible to see players kind of be at a completely clueless and such a bundle of nerves that they're like, I really don't know what I'm going to do. And I think eventually they all kind of get the hang of it. It's if they enjoy it, yeah, I think somebody like a Henry Menezes really enjoyed his commentary, and it kind of it showed on air. And I think Darren, after the first three, and Darren is a major critique of himself. Darren is always like super critical about himself. I mean, I think he must be so difficult to have in the dressing room. He's like, yeah, I was so bad. That's all he must be thinking.
No, I'm always like critical. I think I'm always self-critical is because I always feel I can do better. Whether, like, for example, even when I was while I was playing, like if I had a decent game, but I still know I made one or two bad passes, I would be like, man, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, that shouldn't have happened. But still, whatever. I want to like work on that. And yeah, but I like to just play it down and just be like self-critical. I don't know. I am that way. Not that I'm a negative person, but yeah, I just like want to make sure I don't repeat the same mistake again.
Yeah, I mean, when we are doing it from home, there's about 1.5 second delay in the image. So if Darren puts his hand up and he wants to say something, I'll probably see him put his hand up a second and a half later, right? So that kind of coordination hasn't yet set in. So sometimes when we overlap on air and Darren gets like super flustered and he's like, "Oh my God, what did I do?" And I'm like, "It's okay. It's totally okay. We're doing it away from home. It's difficult, but yeah, I can't wait to do a game with him. While we are sat next to each other or standing or whatever." And then it'll be. I think it'll be a much better experience. It'll sound much better. That's what I believe.
Yeah, that's gonna be a lot of fun. Cause even when I've been in the in the box when you guys have been doing comms, and then it's so much more fun when you are like watching the game, looking at each other, and it feels like you're like watching the game as spectators in front of a screen. It's a lot more fun, and yeah, I can't wait to do that. To be honest, I think that's so much more fun.
Yeah, I think with this great conversation back and forth, I can just keep my mic forever on mute and just keep listening as a perfect first audience, and I get privileged to hear the audio and of course the producer on the show as well. But That was brilliant conversation. And I must ask, Pulasta, you've mentioned a couple of names, right, earlier that you've done commentary with. If you can probably, if not all, if you can literally pick some of them and tell us some insight to the person or how something fun and interesting, like you've done with Henry Menezes, you've done with Renedy, you've done with Mays, you've done with Coach Prads. So if you can just give us some fun bits about these different individuals.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it was way back, but I'm so lucky, and it's kind of, right now the timing is also very poignant. But I also did some games with Novi, and that was something absolutely unbelievable. Like early in my career, first two and a half seasons, to share a cab with him, do games with him, and just to see him come without any prep, and go for it. It's ridiculous how much information is stored in his mind. And he was such a sport, because I would sometimes tell him, if Noe would say something which would completely fly over my head in terms of a fact, something from way back, which was that was his brand. And I would tell him, Noe, that and he would insist that you've got to call me Novi. He didn't like being called sir or something like that. And I would say, Novi, but nobody's there to question you when you said this story. So if I want to figure out if what you said is true or not, I would know. And Novi's like, he's a sport. He's like, oh, I see what you're doing. You think I'm making things up. So, we would have a laugh about that. But great guy. But yeah, I think I've been lucky in terms of, with Mace, it was very, very, I was like very moved. I know Mace is like this super funny guy. He makes everybody feel so comfortable. But for me, kind of watching ESPN and Mace and Shebby doing that show, from way, way back in the early 2000s, and then to kind of have him, on comms with me was incredible. I think we make a great team. We are very lucky we get good goals. Interesting tidbits. Mace obviously is remarkably funny. To not laugh out loud on the mic while you're doing a game with Mace is very, very difficult. He's such a funny guy, and his expressions and his gestures are just I love it. I love doing games with him. With Henry, it was very different. He was such a different character. He's like this. He had this aura of being a don, and that voice had a certain gravitas, and he would always talk about fitness. I had tight ITBs, and he would like properly show me stretches at halftime that he did as a goalkeeper when his ITBs were tight. And he took a lot of fun photos. So yeah, Henry Menezes and the selfie camera is something that would always be on, until I told him that I introduced him to Instagram, and I said I made a big mistake. And then I was having a conversation with his daughter as well, who's into sports psychology, and she was telling me that you've made a big mistake getting my dad on Instagram, because now that's all he does all day on the phone. So yeah, I think with Prad it's very different, because we are really good friends off air as well. I think the two of us Geminis get along very well, being sarcastic and very, very, cracking jokes all the time off air, and being super well behaved on air, and trying to see Prad kind of use so many euphemisms on air. He's amazing. It's I think with everybody it's a very different experience. Come what may. I don't remember having a bad partner. I think, even if I did, I wouldn't probably say it. But I think everybody was quite unique. And with Darren, obviously it's fun, because I'm very glad we met in the bubble beforehand. I don't know how the equation might have been otherwise, because, I've never met you, X, Y, Z. But now we know each other so well that we are secretly hoping we are in the same crew in the bubble. And then we get to play football. And, Darren can teach me a few tricks now and then in the next 4.5 months.
Well, thank you so much for those insights, and especially, giving us some tidbits about how Novi sir does this. And, he's unfortunately, in the hospital, I think, still, and we pray that he recovers very soon and he's back home. Well, Darren, the new season is coming soon. Like I said to our listeners, you will be listening to the show a week before the season could begin. So keeping that in mind, your thoughts and expectations on this season ahead.
Oh, the season's going to be, it's going to be very, very tight. There's going to be a lot of action. Again, you look at all the teams, I think, I think they've strengthened in pretty much every department. if the last season was so close, it went down to like the last game week, and I think this time around I wouldn't be surprised if it was the same, because you see a lot of the teams, I think the likes of Bengaluru have made some changes, Hyderabad have gotten players, you have your usual suspects of Mumbai and ATK Mohun Bagan also look strong again. And I'm again looking at teams like Kerala Blasters and Odisha, and SC East Bengal, who didn't do too well last season, but have really gotten some good players, change of personnel, and it's going to be really, really difficult to call actually who's going to do well, who's going to make the top four. And there's just so many teams that are looking good. FC Goa, again, a team that are always consistent, have won the Durand Cup now. So it's just going to be. I'm super excited. I'm really, really excited to like just see how this season pans out. To be honest.
Pulasta, same question to you.
Looking forward to the season. I don't know analysis wise, but for me, I'm looking forward to. I think more young players. That always kind of excites me. And I'm looking forward to, if you ask me personally, I think the development of somebody like an Apuya, hoping for the development of somebody like a Nemil. This is what I am looking forward to in terms of even the football. I always get excited about, let's say, a Thapa maturing, entering his mid-20s, what he can do. These little stories are what, kind of the season, that is how the season attracts me in terms of who will win or who will not. See, there are the usual suspects, as Darren said, but it'll be for me, it's intriguing to see what coaches can do when they're at teams long term. It'll be very interesting for me to kind of see what Habas can do with ATK Mohun Bagan, again with a certain kind of stability. Mumbai City with a change in the coaching staff, so that's always interesting. And I think there is now more freedom. I think there's more that managers are giving players in terms of to express themselves, and braver teams, hopefully some new tactics, something exciting. That's what I'm looking forward to. So I'm gonna be keeping my fingers crossed for lots of nice, intriguing stories from another season.
Great. Now, last question to Pulasta and Darren. Pulasta, if I had to ask you that one person that you would like to commentate with, one name internationally or anything, one person that you probably would love to do it.
Internationally or from within the country?
Anywhere.
If you speak to me from the perspective of, I think if for an expert to be alongside me, and I know we never want this to happen because we always want him to keep playing forever, but I think Sunil Chhetri would sound amazing on air, and I would like to have him as a partner on comms someday. But that is if that is like, one of those common answers, then it is, because I think a Gurpreet would also do very well on air, given how spontaneous he is. I love his the way the accent is when he speaks in English. It's very intriguing, very interesting to hear that. Internationally, let me pick internationally as well. Who can we pick? I wouldn't mind either Gary Neville, maybe Roy Keane. I think Roy Keane. I would love to do a game with Roy Keane. See if I can kind of get some incredible nuggets out of him, kind of twist my way around words and try to trap him to say something about a player. See if he's sly enough to avoid that. Roy Keane would be fun, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I don't know the other names, but I'm pretty sure Chhetri himself will have many more years to play before he joins you in the Combox. 100%. He himself said that.
Yes.
So, Darren, if I had to ask you that.
I'm too new to this, to have like somebody I'm really looking forward to doing comms with or something like that. For now, I think I just want to do comms with all of these guys. Yeah, like I'm really, I'd really want to do it with more games with Pulasta, because I'm enjoying that a lot, and with like I would want to do it with Prad and Anant and Mace as well. And if I was ever doing a show, I think I'd, like Pulasta mentioned, I would love to do it with Roy Keane, because I think he's like no nonsense. Yeah, I love that about him. Sometimes I think he's a little too critical, but that's how he is as a person. I mean, you've heard stories about him as a player as well, and someone with him, or someone like Henri as well. Henri is pretty good in the studio.
Nice. How fancy, Darren. Wow. See, these players think differently, they for Darren to think, oh, Henri, Henri. It's amazing.
Yeah, so and then again with like you mentioned with Chetri and Gurpreet and a lot of the footballers as well, to do a show with them would be a lot of fun. So yeah, I wouldn't mind doing it with them, because it's I think it just all of this becomes so much easier when you know the person beforehand. I think that really helps when you've met the person and hung out and you joke about things. So I think there's and you can see that with a lot of experts as well. It just becomes a lot more easier. So yeah, I think I'll have a long list, but just off the top of my head, these are the few names.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're quite right about. So Phil Brown was staying right next door last time in the bubble, and that was great fun. Kind of showed on air as well. But now that I'm reminded, Siju, I'm sorry, but I know it's very rare that we don't have two leads together and a guest. But if ever kind of there's a situation like that, I think to do a game with Anant would give me like the goosebumps. Kind of that would be incredible if we did it. Kind of share the lead, this thing, and have an expert or something. That would just be so exciting because I've looked up to him for such a long time, and to kind of do it with him would be great fun. It would be very different, but it would be great fun.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I hope we all get to see this, all of the things that you mentioned in the coming years. Now, if I had to give you a situation, I know I've been saying it's my last question, but this is not a question. It's a situation for the both of you. You both are on the comms, on the mic, and you have to say this line probably. Follow and subscribe to the Totally Indian Football Show in the style of how you do commentary. How would you do that? Pulasta, you're in the lead. Darren, you play the second fiddle. You have to say follow and subscribe to the Totally Indian Football Show.
I'm kind of thinking if I can think of a line for you in terms of to put it out in a better way. But if you just want that line, then what do we make Darren say? Do we make Darren say the same thing?
I'll probably add to what you generally say, how I come in with replays, and just add like some technical bit there and things like that, and the good work they've been doing, and stuff like that. I think you'll have to come up with some really good lines, Paula.
No, do a like a welcome thing? Hello to. Okay. Anyway, so and at the end of the day, do not forget to follow, share, and subscribe to Totally Indian Football, because what else? What else are you going to listen to when it comes to Indian football, Darren?
Yes, these guys have been doing some absolute fabulous work since they've started, and no nonsense, amazing work, build up, a lot of preparation, and I think they're bang on every single time they're on the pitch.
Absolutely, and this is just pre-season. Imagine when the season starts, it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that wasn't bad. I don't know what I was saying.
That was incredible. That was incredible. You guys made my job easier. To all the listeners out there, you've heard it from Pulasta and Darren, and those are the best guys. When they say, you listen. So please go ahead and do what exactly they said. This is the Totally Indian Football Show. And before I go, thank you so much, Pulasta and Darren, for taking time, talking to me, and being on the show.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Thank you once again, guys. This is episode number 5 of the Totally Indian Football Show. I'm your host, Siju, signing off. See you next week.